as a bonus, QoR has sent me their non-commercially available YInMN Blue just so that we can have a look at what it's like. And so we are going to take a good look at this. As you can see, I did the full swatch and then compare it to another YInMN Blue that we've had before of the Kremer's YInMN Blue and see how the two compare. So we're going to do side-by-side comparisons at the same time as talking about this. And I have to say, in terms of re-wet, which is something that doesn't show up on here, is that the YInMN Blue by QoR, I poured it onto a plate, let it dry thoroughly, and then started painting this, and it was very easy to re-wet. It was incredibly easy to re-wet. It was almost creamy. It's really nice. So it's definitely easier to re-wet. Now, I don't want to get you guys too excited about this YInMN Blue because they have a really hard time getting hold of this pigment because, as you know, YInMN Blue is still a very new pigment and there's not much available, and it would be prohibitively expensive to make this for commercially available, as well as just not being able to get hold of the supply of it. And I know that big paint makers everywhere around the world have had problems getting the pigment, or just any pigment, in the last year through the times that we've been going through. So YInMN Blue is probably not on their priority. So there's no plan to make this commercially available. However, I think it's super kind of them to send me a tube. I wouldn't have even dreamed of asking them, but they offered, so of course I'm gonna say yes. So this is the QoR's one, and then this is the Kremer's one. And as I was saying, with the re-wettability, the QoR's one was much better. Let's take a look at the colors, and I would say in the gradation, in the mass tone, the Kremer one has a little bit more chalky look, whereas this is closer to ultramarine blue, but with a tiny bit of chalkiness, like a flatness to it that ultramarine blue wouldn't have. YInMN Blue sits between a ultramarine blue and cobalt blue, and it's one of those pigments that if you are a pigment nerd like me and you just want to try different new pigments, it's hugely exciting. If you're not a pigment nerd and you just use watercolor to paint with, then I would say it's a little bit boring because it's so close to ultramarine blue and it's so close to cobalt blue that you can mix the two. If you mix cobalt blue and ultramarine blue, you can get YInMN Blue color. So you wouldn't add this in addition to either an ultramarine blue or a cobalt blue onto your palette. But it's still very exciting. And I must apologize if my conversation goes a bit over here and a bit over there and get distracted. That's because I get very excited about the YInMN Blue. But going back to gradation, you see here the granulation is superb. It's so much stronger than the Kremer's one. You can see granulation even in the mass tone, and it's almost like lightning look around here. And then the granulation goes all the way to the very palest of colors. I love this texture here. I think that's what would make me choose YInMN Blue specifically, because even though ultramarine blue is granulating, it's rare to get this much granulation out of an ultramarine blue. So if I was playing with texture and not wanting to have control over it and just be excited about what the paint does, then I would definitely go for the YInMN Blue by QoR. In terms of paper, we have this whole test sheet is made with Bockingford cold press paper. We also have Bockingford hot press, Bockingford rough, and then Arch cold press paper. And you can really see the granulation happening here as well as here. So I would stick to the cold press if you by any chance get hold of this and want to play with it and have this exciting effect happening, then I would stick with cold press paper. In terms of opacity, it's pretty opaque. That's the same with Kremer. And by the way, I will put high-res scan of this as well as this on my Patreon and also my Patreon lounge. If you've not heard of Patreon lounge, that's because it's brand new. It's a place where I've organized all the scans so that they're a lot easier to find than it is over on Patreon. So I'll put the scans up there, both at Patreon and Patreon lounge. The opacity is very opaque. It's more opaque than the Kremer's one. The lifting, it lifts pretty well. You get a nice straight edge. I would say it's a medium lifting. What's really exciting though is that the granulation kind of stays. You can almost see how here's all the granulation and then the lines kind of continue. I've never seen paint do that, so it's very exciting. And I just get distracted by how granulating this color is. It's almost like it's cracking. You know, in craft, you get crackle paint. It's almost that strong a crackle. In terms of glazing, it does lift easily. So you get this rim. So if you're going to glaze with it, then you're going to have to be a little bit careful. With gauze, because it's a granulating color, it will gauze very well. And then let's look at the color mixes. This side is Kremer, this side is QoR. And I would say that QoR's one is more noticeably heavily granulating. They both are, but over here, it's a lot more texture than over here. In terms of color, I would say that cadmium yellow orange, that kind of yellow orange is going to be its complementary color, which makes sense because that's the complementary color for ultramarine blue. And you get some beautiful textures happening here. In terms of salt, it doesn't really do much. I think it granulates so much that the salt doesn't do anything, and it's just taken over by the granulation. In terms of water blooms, you can make out where I dropped the water, but you don't really see all the feathering and all that and the cauliflowering and stuff. In terms of comparison of these two colors, I would say that QoR one is stronger, but obviously Kremer is commercially available, whereas QoR isn't. The other thing that was a problem with Kremer that I want to test out with QoR, their YInMN Blue come in a faux pan, and after a few months it dries to the point it doesn't re-wet anymore, and you have to either be able to flip over the pan or dig through till you get to a layer where it will re-wet again. So it's kind of wasting that very, very precious pigment. So what I've done is I have poured a little bit of paint onto here. I'm going to keep it dry, and I've dated it so I know when I poured it, and in 6 months time, which I think is plenty of time to test this out, I'm going to do another video and show you guys how this re-wets to make sure that the QoR one doesn't suffer from the same issue as the Kremer one. So what do I think of this color in itself? I think it's amazing. For a pigment nerd like me, it's incredibly exciting to get a new pigment that we can play with. It's a shame that it's not commercially available yet and that it's going to be still hard, but maybe, you never know, in few years time, maybe in 10 years time, this will become a very widely available pigment and we can use this in our daily lives. Why would you pick this over ultramarine blue or cobalt blue? Would be one, if you're a pigment nerd, like as I said, because it's just exciting. New pigments, rare pigments, they're very exciting to us. Two is if you want this excessive granulating and you want to play with the texture, I think it would be so much fun to play with. I think those two will be the main reason. The rarity of it and the granulation. In terms of color, I would say in terms of the hue, it's nothing special. You have to really know your blue pigments to know that this is different from ultramarine blue and cobalt blue that's available. If you show this to a non-pigment nerd person, they'll be like, it's a blue pigment, what's the big deal? But it is a big deal and it's very exciting. I hope this overview of the QoR YInMN Blue is exciting for you guys as well, because I know there are plenty of pigment nerds out there. And if you have any questions about this color in terms of how I feel about it, then do let me know in the comments down below, and I will answer. If you have any questions about this color, then do also leave a comment, because Jed from QoR does watch every single one of my QoR videos, which I'm very grateful for, and offer technical support. Please do not ring QoR customer service asking for this, because it's not available. I did get asked by Jared, please let them know that when this video is going to go out, because they do have to increase staff on customer service and they need to know to expect that. But if you can avoid doing that, they are aware that you would want them commercially available, and they will, I'm sure they will do it as soon as it's physically possible and it makes a financial sense to do so, because they want to provide paints that are practical for everyone rather than do incredibly expensive paints or very rare paints that only a few people can get hold of. Huge massive thanks to QoR and Jared for sending me this paint. I feel so lucky. So lucky to have received this tube. I've shared some with Ev, so I'm sure she will do a video and she can tell you how she feels about it. But I just feel blessed to have worked with QoR, but also to get this YInMN Blue, because I never thought I could get my hands on them. So yeah, huge thanks. I'm just gushing now, so I'm gonna go away, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Do let me know what you think of this color. We have a couple more QoR videos on the next 2 Mondays, so do look forward to that, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye.